Welcome to Shed Talk with Kevin Halliday. Today, we're going to be talking about ADHD and what matters because so many people spend years thinking about what was wrong with them when really they just needed to understand awareness and having the right tools. Today, I'm joined with Stephanie DeMaria, founder of Rise Wellness Collective, a therapist and a former educator, and she helps navigate people through ADHD. I sometimes think I have ADHD, which I probably do. And this is where the clarity and the real strength and conversation comes in. Stephanie, you know what? Welcome to Shed Talk.
Creating curiosity by asking better questions. This is Shed Talk.
All right, welcome, Stephanie DeMaria. Thank you for being on Shed Talk with Kevin.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for having me.
You know what? It's wonderful because you know what? We were just talking a couple minutes just before we get on air here and understanding that we're going to talk about ADHD and how important it is. But I reached out to you out of the blue and said, hey, will you come on my podcast? I wanted you to talk a little bit about that because everybody has a perspective.
Mhm.
I think, okay, I want to have the best people that can talk about ADHD. Here you are, you're a therapist, you look at this. And then all of a sudden, when people reach out, we think good thoughts, but what is the other person on the other end thinking?
Yeah.
And the things you know that you don't know. So how did that, tell me a little bit about it.
Yeah. I mean, like, I'm a fairly new business owner. Actually, like, it's been 1 year now, technically, that my business has been alive. And opportunities don't typically just fall in your lap. I'm a therapist. I'm advertising myself as a therapist. People come to me and ask for consults to do therapy. That makes sense. And like, I also do workshops. So I've recently, been asked to do workshops. So that's cool. But someone just calling me up and asking me to be on a podcast isn't something I've experienced before. And I get spam emails of, people saying they want to buy my company or they want to get me, hundreds of clients or whatever. So you're kind of always having to weed through what's real and what's not, right? And especially in the world of the internet. But you called me on the phone. You were clearly a real human, so that helped. Um, but yeah, it definitely, I asked you to send me some more info and I had to go. And then I did my own research, figure out like, is this real? Is this guy legit? He really wants me to come talk? And so yeah, and when I saw all your episodes and the other types of people that you had on your episodes, some of them ranged from, wow, that feels like a celebrity to me. And others were like, people I could identify with, social workers or other smaller business owners. So I thought, oh, I think it's real, right?
And you know what's
Yeah.
interesting? Because it creates curiosity because here I am, I'm looking and say, okay, I'm going to focus on ADHD because I need to really deep dive and understand it. And then I go through the websites and I'm going through it. And you mentioned it right there. Um, a real person, AI can do everything there. And then fake news, fake media, and how all of a sudden our back is already up against the wall,
Mhm.
okay, as a human, as a man, and this. And then here's a guy talking about 50 plus, wants you on this podcast. You're gonna meet at a location like in our studio here to
Mhm.
do that. And you had mentioned about why here I am, I'm gonna talk about men over 50
Mhm.
and how are men gonna actually relate to me, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I said that to you on the phone too, that, my target demographic, like who I work the most with, isn't typically men over 50. I've had clients who are men over 50. I loved them, but mostly I work with kids or moms or parents and families. And teens and young adults. And it just so happens to be that way, you know?
And
Yeah.
that's where you become the daughter. So here's the guy that's 50, and all of a sudden we have mental issues, or we're the guy, and all of a sudden the avatar is a man over 50, and then here he is, overweight, recently divorced. The kids have grown up, and then here you are, and I'm going to use you because you fit that perfect demographic. Is
Mm,
now you're the daughter,
mm,
and then and being in therapy, and then all of a sudden, how does that affect like when we look at men and they think about their kids?
yeah.
What does that perspective look like?
Mm,
So being the the role reversal.
Yeah.
So here I am, I'm the guy, my kids, they don't phone me anymore. We can hear the song Cats in the Cradle and the Silver Spoon. You've heard that song? I might be dating you.
I'm not sure. Can you sing it for me?
Yeah, it goes, I was a Cats in the Cradle and the Silver Spoon, little boy dance in the way of the moon. When it was, Dad, when are you gonna call? I don't know when.
I don't know it.
Oh my gosh.
Is it like a nursery rhyme or is it
No,
like a song?
it's actually a song. Can you throw in my phone here? I'm gonna play that actually because this is actually it was just
Oh,
the tune. Can we just play the little tune of it?
yeah, it might be a copyright
So
violation.
Jackson's our producer here.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we're gonna pull that up, this is the Silver Spoon. But anyway, it's about the father growing up and the kids never call back anymore. Now the kid grows up and now he's the father and wants to spend time with his kids.
Yeah.
So here you are, the daughter, and
Mhm.
then or not by daughter, but anyway, a
Yeah.
daughter of somebody, and
Yeah.
then to be able to talk in that realm.
Yeah. Do you have a daughter?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
Yeah. It's funny. I don't know what year you're born, but you're close to my parents' age
Yeah,
for
so I'm
sure.
58.
Yeah, you said that.
Yeah.
So my dad actually passed away when he was 38 and
Mm.
he would have been 59 this year.
Ah,
So, yeah, so that it's funny that you say that and I turned 38 this year. So it's weird. Yeah, it's a
that
weird year.
that is weird, and then
Yeah.
when you think about it,
Yeah.
so that's where a lot of men and then their daughters, and then having that conversation,
Yeah.
and that they're
I do have a amazing stepdad who we do have lots of great conversations around this kind of stuff. My parents are great at having these conversations. So, yeah, it's cool.
good.
I can yeah.
And you're saying the sign's a little creepy.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah, so I Google you and here I am like, is this a safe situation I'm getting myself into? And then I see your photo and I'm like, okay, wow, like it's kind of intimidating, right? And I think it's cool. Like it's a cool photo, obviously. Um, but to me it doesn't say like, yeah, let's have a really nice conversation about mental health,
Yeah.
right?
And that's the whole thing is
Yeah.
because the things you know that you don't know. So
Yeah.
the idea, we're open up for business. So
Yeah.
here it is. We're like this in business. The
Yeah.
tattoo is the eyes wide open.
Cool.
And why is there a tattoo there?
Mhm.
Because there's no reason. There was no reason to have it, just to have it,
Yeah.
just because my daughter did one on her foot.
Yeah.
So I said I had to do it. Oh, did you find the song?
Oh, I wasn't.
Oh, okay. Okay, sure. We'll get it. Still gonna get that.
Mm.
But so the whole idea, because when you look at it, it had to ask a better question.
Mm.
So, because the whole idea is to ask yourself a better question to get better at something.
Mhm.
Or what does that look like?
Mhm.
So, now to dive into this
Mhm.
ADHD.
Yeah.
One of the questions that I want to know is a lot of people throw the word around ADHD. I got ADHD. I got ADHD. It's like the buzz of the century.
Mhm.
And a lot of people will go to work and say, "Oh, I messed up here. Oh, I got ADHD," and they slough it off.
Mm.
So let's dive into ADHD.
Yeah.
And what is it? How is it? And how do we handle it?
Yeah. So ADHD is a neurodevelopmental disorder. So what that means is that, your neurodevelopment, the way your brain develops, is expected to develop in a certain way. And a neurodevelopmental disorder is when the brain does not develop in the way that we expected. So um that's kind of
The clinical side of it.
yeah, and
Yeah.
and so yeah, full disclosure, I have been diagnosed with ADHD. I was diagnosed last year, so at 36. Okay. My son was also diagnosed with ADHD, and recently my daughter was. So it's in my family, right? And when my son was little, I was certain he was ADHD. Like he's, bouncing off the walls. He can't sit still. It's that very typical presentation of being hyperactive, right? But that's not how you diagnose ADHD. It has to be so many other things. It's not just that. And lots of people said to me, well, maybe he's just a boy. Like he's just a boy. And I do have an older daughter. So it's true. You're comparing your kids to each other. And it's like, okay, he's the second kid. They tend to be a little more wild. And, he's the boy. But so you can't diagnose ADHD when they're too young because that part of their brain wouldn't be developed yet, right? That ability to sit still, to pay attention for a long duration of time, to control your impulses, that comes with development. And so that's the areas that are seen as like deficits, I say in air quotes, is only because they should have developed, but they hadn't. And so basically these kids end up getting sort of perceived as being immature, right? Or being incapable of something that they should have been able to do, right? And neurologically, it's because the brain didn't develop in the way that we expected. But when I say we expected that, that's based on, a bunch of research that was done a long time ago deciding what was normal and what's not normal. So, like, that's a whole other conversation that we could get into, right? But essentially, it's just a different way. The brain has developed to be this different way than what we consider neurotypical.
So we look at it. So as I was growing up,
Mhm.
okay, so we talk about men growing up. We suck it up, don't be a baby, be a
Mhm.
man, be like this. You're supposed to be strong and fine. And then all of a sudden we're active, we're playing war games, we're doing shoot, we're fighting, we're playing on playgrounds, and we're doing this. Nobody's diagnosed with ADHD back then,
Right.
hyperactive.
Yeah.
Now, all of a sudden, fast forward and using the young generation, the generations, the woke crowds, and I'll use this all as
Mhm.
example. Have you found it seems to be that word seems to be used way more now than it's ever been used? It's like everybody's on a medication,
Mhm.
everybody's on something.
Mhm.
Now, is that correct? Like, is it like, would you say 90% of the population is ADHD?
No.
Yeah.
And so this is a big topic, like, in
Mhm.
in the field for sure, and there's a lot of disagreement even among professionals. So some, psychiatrists, psychologists do believe that it is being overdiagnosed, right? And then, um,
Is
but
any
also we know so much more about it now, and the thing is anything we diagnose, it's all kind of a man-made construct anyways, right? Like the DSM, which is the Diagnostic Statistics Manual, is like of psychiatry, is of mental disorders, right? It's like it's the mental disorder Bible, essentially, right? And it's evolved many times. Like we're on the 5th version of it, and it's
It's like a
changed.
king's Bible.
Right, yeah, right? Like, it
Yeah.
changes all the time, and science changes, and research changes thing, and, like, in the '80s, there was ADD and ADHD, and they were separate, right? But then they became lumped together as one disorder that's ADHD with different types, an inattentive type and the impulsive hyperactive type, and then it evolved again now, it's a little bit less typed, although people still use that terminology, and it's just a bit more complex. Like there's just different presentations of the disorder. So, in order to be diagnosed, like as per the DSM, you have to have, if you're a child, I think it's 6, and if you're an adult, it's 5 symptoms from, there's like a list of 9 that are inattentive symptoms, and then hyperactive or impulsive symptoms. And if you have to have either 5 or 6 of one or the other to be considered that type.
So if you're looking at men, say, let's go men
Yeah.
over 40, men over 30, and they're not died. I'll use myself. I'll use me as
Yeah.
an example. Say, I get a lot of people say, "Oh, Kevin, you're totally ADHD." I've never been diagnosed with, it, but they said, "Oh no, you're clear down that realm." Well, because I'm hyperactive, because of this. Well, there's a bunch of stuff that I think, and I'm going, hmm. I wonder how hard is it to diagnose me personally.
Mhm.
Can I use Chat GBT to
No.
diagnose me and say, "Hey, Chat, what are the symptoms that I have to diagnose me personally with ADHD?" Because us older guys,
Yeah.
okay, we look at ourselves and go, "Sure, yeah, I'm ADHD. I'm this. I'm not going to take any meds. I've been,
Mhm.
hey, this is who I am.
Mhm.
Like me for what I am, and that's it." But
Mhm.
all of a sudden, it's now okay. What are what's one of the things that they look for an older men that would say, okay, 5. These are how many steps were there? There's 6 of them,
Symptoms?
or not symptoms, but to
Yeah,
test
so
that.
they're okay, it's way more complicated, yeah, than
Okay,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, but, like, that's just the way the DSM is laid out, but then there are specific tests that have been created, to check for different things, so, like, questionnaires and, like, working memory tests and, like, cognitive functioning tests, like, there's a whole bunch of different things that you would do to, get diagnosed properly. So, I mean, that would be how a psychologist would do it, but, your doctor can also do it, and they're gonna use potentially different measures to do it. So, yeah, it's complicated. It's not that black and white.
And that's where you think is would we throw that around
Mhm.
so much.
Mhm.
I'm ADHD and dealing with the men's mental health side of it and talking to men with issues. A lot of them have ADHD,
Mhm.
I'm assuming.
Yeah, probably.
And it's like, okay, well, what is that? And
Yeah.
then so that's where that whole thing comes into play. And what would be one is there a treatment for that as well, or is it just keep it in check?
Yeah. So the most effective treatment is medication. And a lot of people can be really resistant to that. But that the studies have shown just that it is really effective. And it's because oftentimes there's a huge biological piece in like neurobiological piece in ADHD. And often it's seen as like dopamine seeking behaviors or
What would those be?
yeah, so like eating like really tasty food that's maybe not good for you, right? Or like anything impulsive, right? So we get that dopamine hit is that like pleasure and success of like, yeah, I did it, right? So whenever you get a task done, you're like, yes, that's dopamine, right? And after we get a dopamine hit, we have a little bit of a crash, which is why like after run a marathon and you're so high and you feel so great, you kind of feel like really crappy afterwards. Also, your body hurts, but
Right.
right? And so and there's so much more information out there on that, but it's that, like, scrolling and seeing something funny gives you a dopamine hit, like, that's where that kinda screen
But
addiction.
that doesn't mean you're ADHD.
No, no, we all want dopamine, like,
Right,
dopamine's
right,
good for all of
right.
us, right? But people who have ADHD have a harder time getting dopamine, unless
So
the
I would s
activity's high interest.
so I would have to scroll longer, scroll faster
Mm.
just to get that dopamine hit?
Scrolling is like
Trolling.
they
Yeah, yeah.
scrolling is like a dopamine biohack that's not good for us, right?
Mm,
Like it gets the hit very easily and makes that behavior really addictive,
right.
right? But just sorry, the question that you asked
S
me.
so
Yeah,
so we're looking at the
we
dopamine.
all want dopamine,
Yeah.
but people with ADHD have a harder time getting it unless they're really engaged in the and interested in the subject. So what will happen is, in school, they aren't necessarily going to be as interested in learning about the thing that they're being taught and they're being asked to pay attention to, and that's why it's easier for them to focus on something else, right? So people often think that ADHD kids or people can't focus or can't pay attention. And it's not actually that they can't, it's that the part of the brain that regulates their attention is what struggles. And so they're then like basically it's like that's boring. I would rather daydream because what I've got going on in my head is way more interesting than what they're teaching about.
Can you teach your kids to or someone can you train yourself all of a sudden,
Mm,
you know what? I've gotta do a task over here. This is gonna be very painful to concentrate on it, so I better
mhm.
take some Ritalin or whatever it is,
Yeah.
which they do a lot of I don't know, I use that
People
tongue in cheek.
can do abuse, yeah, the
Yeah,
medication for sure. Um, yeah, so, like, how do you work through that is basically what I
correct,
hear you
yes.
asking me. So the medication that was the first question, is what helps modulate the chemicals in your brain to allow you to make those choices better. The way that I present it to my own personal children is the medication helps you know how to make a better choice.
All right, hit that button, subscribe, and now let's get back to the show.
You had said earlier, a lot of people, psychiatrists and doctors or whatever, say they they easily describe medications faster than all of a sudden using a different system or accountability. So
Yeah.
we'd rather give you pills than actually let's work
Mhm.
with something different that can solve that.
Yeah, It it's not necessarily that it's more easily, it's that the 2 things need to work in tandem,
Okay.
right? And so medication is just one way to help with the neuro side of things. Um, but it doesn't solve everything because unfortunately the world has these expectations, that we have to fall into. And so just taking the medication is not necessarily enough. And some people aren't comfortable with that. And sometimes the medication doesn't work that effectively. It can take lots of different trials of different medications to find the right one. That's something people should talk to their doctors about, not me. But the other option is essentially like environmental support, which is like changing the environment, changing the expectations, and just understanding how their brains work so that we're not creating shame when they're not when they are struggling, right? Like sometimes our expectations are not reasonable, like a lot, like often, right? And so like when we're talking about men who are over 50, I think where ADHD probably plays the biggest role is that they've likely seen themselves through this lens as being flawed or being incapable of certain things for such a long time that like a lot of people with ADHD see themselves as being broken or as being, stupid or incompetent or not good enough or something like that because they had these challenges due to the difference in their brain and they weren't getting the supports that they needed at the time. And so instead they've then developed this negative self-concept.
So if you so was breaking that down a little bit more, and men, and we're going to talk with the men over 50, or if they're
Mhm.
going in, or any man,
Yeah.
and just say, you know what, I feel broken. I feel depressed. Yes, yes, I think I'm diagnosed with ADHD.
Mhm.
I think I'm this. I'm not. Maybe I should take pills. What should they ask? What kind of questions should they ask themselves inside? Like, what would be a better question for a man to ask himself with everything that you just said and said, okay, I'm broken. I
Mhm.
feel this. What should my next step be? Is it going to a therapist?
I mean, it can be, or talking to a doctor for
Yeah.
sure. I mean, the question as a therapist that I would ask is, what's the need that's not being met?
My head.
Your
All of a
head,
sudden,
how?
I'm feeling depressed, or I just feel like I'm not there.
Mm,
So they're going that way, and I'm talking with men because I to talk about the avatar of the man being at this age and going through that. All of a sudden his kids are growing up and here he is, and now he's trying to find purpose.
mhm.
Maybe through his whole life he just didn't feel purpose, and then
Yeah.
say, maybe medication at 50 for an ADHD drug would probably make you feel better.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not yeah, it's not necessarily that simple, but it could be, right?
Yeah.
Like if you've had so oftentimes like depression or anxiety can be a byproduct of ADHD that's not treated or diagnosed because you're then like going through life not meeting these expectations, why can't I manage these impulses? Why can't I, get my homework done? And that starts to be, where those other problems come from. Like a lot of people then are, we call it masking. Masking is where you're essentially forcing yourself to fit into what people expect of you and that becomes exhausting, and what happens is that by around 50, you're saying that purpose that right? We talk about midlife crises a lot,
Yeah.
and it's kind of like I've been living my life inauthentically for so long, for whatever reason that is, and now I want to actually be authentic to who I am.
And it's kind of one of the questions you'd say, you don't know you're in jail until you break out, because
Mm.
when you're masking, you don't realize it. And men, we talk about men as wearing that armor.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
they don't know they had that armor for so long, and then until they realize, I can't take this anymore. Here I am at this age. I need to ask a better question, and yes, I've had it.
Mhm,
So here's my next step is to ask a better question. And
mhm.
maybe I do have ADHD and I never ever had thought about the medication. And I'm just
Yeah,
using that
yeah.
and just trying to open it up, because that's where that ADHD question comes in. Guys, it may not be a good thing, may not be a bad thing, but you get to ask yourself internally.
Mhm. Yeah. Um For sure, and yeah, I think it's really about I mean, what I like about kind of knowing about having ADHD, because for me, I was only diagnosed last year and I didn't know, and it wasn't even until I had kids that I started to wonder. My brother had ADHD, was diagnosed when he was 6, and so my whole life was like, "Well, he's got ADHD, but I'm,
Right.
you know, fine, and I'm not struggling in school, and I'm doing well," and all of those things. Um
But why'd you get tested?
Yeah, so, I had 2 kids and, COVID happened, and all of a sudden, I no longer had the ability to manage all the things. So, it was like I was getting emotionally dysregulated, like, getting frustrated with my kids, like, everything's loud, right? Like, there's more anxiety in the world because of, COVID lockdown, I was on mat leave, like, it was just a lot, and then I went back to work and I was teaching. Um, so like just being a teacher and then being a mom, it was just I was juggling too many things and then it just felt like all the balls were falling. And research shows sometimes you don't have a diagnosis, especially if you are more of that inattentive type, because the presentation isn't loud enough to warrant getting assessed, right? Like if you're not struggling, if you're not, getting into fights with kids, if you're not like going to anger management or failing your classes, no one thinks there's anything going on. If you have all these adaptive tools to mask and cope in the world, you're probably not getting a diagnosis. You're just getting through life. And it's really common actually for women and girls to be underdiagnosed in childhood because we tend to be better at masking, right? But that doesn't mean that there aren't men out there, right? There are men who are also great at masking or are that inattentive type are more introverted and quieter or internalize things rather than externalize things. And they're getting missed as well. And at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter if you are or you aren't. It's just about how you feel, right? And, like, how you're doing, I think. And so for me, it was like, "Why am I so overwhelmed? Do I have this thing?" And I was in school learning about stuff, and ADHD, and I was every time I'm learning more about it, I was just thinking, "Huh, I wonder if I am." And when my son was diagnosed, it's highly genetic, right? And all of my girlfriends started getting diagnosed around me, and it was like, "How are you ADHD? You're just like me."
Right. But isn't it interesting because you say it all of a sudden, it's like when you read something, you're gonna read a book, you're gonna have something, and then it opens up a whole Pandora box, and all of a sudden, "Hey, that's me.
Yeah.
Wait a second," and now you're studying it.
Yeah.
You're doing ADHD, ADHD. Now all you see is
Mhm.
ADHD.
Yeah.
So my neighbor has it, this person has it,
Mhm.
there's it's like seeing the red car for the first
Mhm.
time. Someone says you're gonna go buy a car,
Mhm.
and it's the red one, and if you think red, you're gonna see 1,000 red cars, or you're gonna buy a hot you never see that for the hot tubs.
Right,
You're
yes.
ready to buy a hot tub, you see
Yeah.
1,000 hot tubs.
Yeah, yeah.
So here you are in the ADHD.
Confirmation bias. Yeah,
Yeah, so here
yeah.
it is, and now all your friends have ADHD. So when you look at men and then we're talking about it, well, I think I do. Well, maybe I'll feel better if I'm on medication.
Mm,
And I just think I should feel better.
mm,
Now, maybe I better get diagnosed with ADHD because you mentioned about feeling good.
mm.
Well, if you feel good, you don't have to go get diagnosed if you're feeling good. If you're feeling bad, maybe get
Yeah,
diagnosed.
and it's not necessarily even about I think it's less about the medication and more about how you understand yourself and how you see yourself in the world. So, like, yeah, does the medication help me cope with all of those demands better? 100% it does. But the thing that is actually more powerful is that I don't mentally beat myself up about it like I did before, like about not being able to juggle all the things, right? It's almost like because the medication helps me do the things, I'm not upset with myself for not doing the things.
So do you do visualization?
Do I do visualization?
So in other words, you say you don't beat yourself up over it. Now, is it not beat yourself up to say, "Oh, I can't believe I did this. I can't believe I did it," or is it like, "No, I'm okay with it"? Like, do you
Yeah, it's like
visualize through that?
it's a more I'm okay with it. And just understanding that like motive I guess when you understand yourself through the lens of the diagnosis, it normalizes it. And then there's not the shame piece because the shame is the part that's actually destructive, right? So when you think something's wrong with you and there's that feeling of shame, like that's the part that makes you unwell, right?
And that's interesting because of how many people think out there that if you don't know, you feel shame versus if I know, I can deal with it.
Right. And so yeah, it depends because there's also a lot of like stigma sometimes in having diagnoses and ADHD like you're saying it's everywhere it's becoming more common and so that might mean the stigma is reducing itself but like when you were kids right that wasn't the case right or like you potentially just be labeled as a bad kid right and that's what used to happen. Like, I know my dad was very ADHD. He was never diagnosed, but we're all pretty sure, right? And it was just, made poor decisions because he lacked impulse control and you break things all the time and get in big trouble. And that was just unacceptable in the world that he lived in. And he was like sent to some school for bad kids, right? And I think our mentality's changed. I really like to believe there's no such thing as bad kids. There's bad behavior, right? But there's always a reason behind the behavior. So what is the reason? What's the need that's trying to be met? That's the way that I see it.
Interesting. It's kind of all right. That's why we're going to go to the school of ADHD. That's why as we were younger, they'd send us to those
Mm.
schools. And we
Oh,
actually,
yeah.
there's actually schools for that.
Okay, like a specialized program, specialized school.
Correct. So when you think about it, and my listeners, if you're in the 50s, they're going to probably remember these, but there was actually schools. We called them trade schools.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So all of a sudden, well, if you can't be a lawyer, if you can't go to university, you can't be a lawyer, you don't have the attention deficit. Oh, you're probably better with your hands. We're going to,
Mhm.
you know what? You need to go to this school.
Yeah.
And they would call it the vocabularies or whatever vocabularies.
Yeah.
They
Vocational.
stereotyped you into
Totally.
these pigeonholes to say
Mhm.
this is where you're going, not realizing that it has nothing to do with our skills in the trades.
Mm.
And here we are, and I'm in the trades with my company, Spindle Stairs, and the trades guys make way better money. They're more what I would call more connected than a lot of guys that have been in the university side of it
Mhm.
with mental illness,
Mhm.
not realizing that it opened up further for them.
Mhm.
So, and I'm not saying that one's better than the other or vice versa, but
Yeah.
you can see that transition. Back in the day, we had schools for that, and then all of a sudden they put you there. So yeah, where your dad
Totally.
would come into play.
And that's funny because my dad was also in the trades. He was a carpenter. And so,
Mhm.
and that's exactly what happened is he actually ended up like having a shop teacher who kind of changed his life because now he finally felt good at something, right? And when you're told that you're not measuring up in the reading and the writing and all of these other factors, but then you are good at something when it's like mechanical or, something else, then you do finally feel good and you find your place and that is positive, right? As long as that's how it feels, right? You shouldn't be
Correct.
told. You shouldn't be pigeonholed to go there.
No, and you're in your tribe, and then you got
Yeah.
your tribe, and then you're able
Yeah.
to open up because you're able to concentrate on that widget, commodity, whatever that is
Mhm.
over here, versus you just think differently.
Mhm.
And it doesn't mean you're an entrepreneur. It doesn't mean you're a tradesperson. It doesn't mean you're a lawyer. It doesn't mean anything. It
Totally.
just means you're allowed to decide which avenue or road or crossroad or fork that you want to go down.
Yeah.
And a lot of people put stigma to that. And
Totally.
so
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
we get to open it up.
Mm. Yeah, and it's so true. And at the end of the day, like we're saying, is the label doesn't necessarily matter so much because it can be a means to an end if that's like getting medication to help support you, if that's getting funding, for disability supports, things like that for your kids, IPPs, which is like modifying curriculum if needed, things like that. But I think at the heart of it is, we developed to have these different types of brains for a reason. And I think like they are adaptive. We do need people who see the world in different ways. And if you look at, some of the big, Einstein was I think ADHD or had autism like
Well, they
that.
all are.
Right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Right. And like,
Yeah.
so it's like
Yeah.
kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. Right. At the end of the
Yeah.
day, it's just like accepting that we're all different and neurodiversity is a thing and we all have strengths in some areas and challenges in others.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? Do you have any final last questions or anything that you want to say to state out there?
Oh my gosh, that was quick.
Oh, it is. It's awesome.
Uh ooh. Okay, I think if you're wondering, if you are ADHD, then definitely talking to a professional is a good choice if that's something you really need to know for yourself. And if you do have ADHD and you're not sure what that really means, right? Like that could also warrant talking to somebody. And I think like for me, I just really value knowing more about myself. That's something that's always been helpful to me in my journey. And so um I would encourage other people to do the same thing. Is like the more that you know about yourself and knowing that being authentic to who you are, to what your strengths are, to what your challenges are, whether it has a label or it doesn't, and just knowing that like that's great and that's perfect and you know, there's no shame in being different.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
And the greatest thing about it is we always ask yourself a better question. So if you're on the ADHD spectrum and stuff, and we would sit there, I got to ask myself a better question. Got to ask myself a better question. Don't ask yourself a better question. Think of a question that's better.
Mm,
So because we get tied up in, I got to ask a question. So we keep saying that same words over and over.
yeah.
And what is the question? And I tell everybody out there, you'll find it. It's a practice. And then ask yourself it personally, and then you'll grow bigger for yourself. I don't know if that makes sense when I'm going
Mm.
down
Yeah, it makes me just think like what needs to be met, right?
Correct.
Yeah, and that's kind of like the better question.
Yeah,
Maybe.
it is. All right, you know what? Like, share, hit that like button, subscribe button. You know what? You're here on Shed Talk. You know what, Stephanie? Thank you very much. That was awesome to have you on board.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Now you know. Shed Talk.